So why, we all think, social workers, and those of you who are from other disciplines, medicine, economics, education, get sick of hearing about social workers, but you're surrounded by social workers right now. But why is this important beyond just doing what seems logical, which is the fact, as Ellen showed in the statistics, just how few of our students are getting this kind of education, this kind of information. When I was back at the University of Kentucky and a faculty member, I was asked to lead a curriculum development effort by the college. And I came up with this revolutionary idea, which is to say, let's go out and find out who our students are actually working with. And we found that most of our students who are graduating, certainly with BSW and MSW degrees in direct practice, who were they seeing? They were seeing women with children who were struggling with a substance use disorder, probably with a significant trauma history, and with a baby or a toddler or children, often in a violent, intimate partner relationship, and struggling with comorbid health and other mental health illnesses such as anxiety or depression. And I said, the revolutionary idea we're going to do is actually prepare students to work with the people that they're going to work with. It sounds revolutionary, doesn't it? Partly why that's important is that I think, along with what Captain King was talking about, secondary traumatic stress, compassion fatigue, burnout, there's also a very important piece that's coming into the literature. The National Academy of Medicine has been publishing material on this over the last few months, is this idea of moral distress. What is moral distress? Moral distress is not necessarily that you're overworked or that you're exposed to traumatic experience. Moral distress occurs when you're put in a position as a professional and you don't have the tools to do what you need to do, and you begin to develop or accumulate a sense of guilt, anxiety, a sense of loss, that you've trained for years to do something and you can't accomplish it, and a sense of responsibility that you're coming into the situation in a way that you really can't help people. And all of us in social work, and I'm not going to say all of us, I'm going to say myself. I'm 61 years old, so I've had plenty of clients in my history, and I can think back, and most of us probably can, who've been in the profession for a while, of all those folks that we were not able to help, all those folks that we wanted to help but couldn't do it, all of those folks that we tried to help, and we actually made things worse for them because we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know that we didn't know what we were doing. So the biggest problem is not knowing what you don't know. And I operated in that sphere for all too many times. So Angela, I can relate to the fact that you threw an incredible, well-funded program and nobody came. That's all of us can relate to that in terms of these failure experiences. What distinguishes the people in this room is that we are interested in learning from success and failure. And that's very inspiring and very important. It's one component, I think, of what a resilient person does. And that's what we're trying to do today and with this consortium. I think the question of why does social work education need this kind of program? What can it do for us as a profession? What can it do for us as educators and for our students? First of all, this consortium and pulling together this curriculum really is an incredible example of utilizing social capital and intellectual capital. That is, as Captain King talked about earlier, about the need for social connectedness. We are creatures of social connection. In fact, our bodies, our brains are wired fundamentally around connectedness, and we need each other. We are also overcoming with this consortium a big problem in Florida, which is that of geography. Rural, urban, suburban, north, south, northwest, northeast, southwest, the beach, the mountains, every kind of geographical configuration. We are a microcosm of the United States of America. And if we can demonstrate the capacity to come together and harness the social capital and the intellectual capital of our experiences, pulling from the rich cultural, political, social heritages in the regions we're all from to create this curriculum and to really learn from each other, that's a remarkable event. And that little icon of the map represents a really powerful example of intellectual and social capital. So you can tell we just did a snapshot of speakers today, but the other thing that this kind of education brings to social work education, and I would say this would apply to any discipline that imports or uses this curriculum, are some really important components that are representative of what's absolutely essential in contemporary higher education. The first one is it has to be multidisciplinary. While we can be proud of each of our professions, and we should be, and professions do an incredible job socializing us and creating our identities, any of our professions are inadequate to providing sufficient analytic framework and tools and understanding to tackle the kind of wicked problems we have in front of us in terms of addiction and substance use. And the complexity of substance use disorder calls us out of our silos to work together, just as it's calling us out of our particular university or college or department to work together. Captain King's a good exemplar of it. Tanya Wren is too, and there's others with the joint degrees, MSW, MPH. This is important to live this out institutionally as well. So thank you for your generosity in being here and thinking about this. The other commitment that's exciting about this is the desire to really look at research-based, science-based approaches and understanding. We have to be able to do this kind of work. We have to be able to teach our students that the research courses they're taking are not a necessary evil, or maybe what they would say, an unnecessary evil. These are important tools to communicate, to understand. And whether students are becoming literate and numerate in terms of research, whether they go on and begin to work on projects, it's absolutely necessary that they understand and become very comfortable, and not only comfortable, but psyched about the capacity for doing research and understanding how to use research in their work, in their practice environments and policy settings. So this consortium is dedicated to that. I love the fact that we are talking about social determinants of health in this curriculum. So we're taking the sociologic and the economic. So that little piece of data on elasticity, I'm a little strange. I really found that to be one of the most exciting pieces of data all day, but that tells you a little bit about how bleak my home life probably is. You can give condolences to my wife when you see her next time. But that kind of information and data connects directly to what Captain King was talking about, which is another mind-blowing idea he laid on me yesterday, which is how do we think about motivational interviewing at the population level? And that data where it says that's an obstacle about when people are making a decision to seek help because of the economic and financial barriers. We're not even getting into the social psychological at that point or culture. I mean, we've got to solve that kind of problem too. But it's crucial for our students to understand that the financing, the economic issues are often what are driving the decision that somebody's may be refusing to go to treatment not because they have traditionally what we think is some kind of moral problem or spiritual problem or lack of commitment. Hopefully we're beyond that. It's also maybe much more than the neurobiology of the disease. And maybe they simply cannot afford to go to treatment. And they may not even know that's what's driving the decision. So these larger economic forces are important for us to be looking at and discussing. The other reason substance use disorder curricula is so important for our educational endeavors moving forward is that this is an incredible way to introduce students and to introduce ourselves, because I'm learning things all the time and looking at this literature, to the neurobiology of addiction, use, reward, and how that plays an important part in the decision-making for how one conducts their life and the kinds of decisions they make to enter treatment, to pursue recovery. You know, substance use disorder, and Angela touched on this and others have touched on it, the use of the word relapse is so loaded because the system has been framed for decades in this idea that this is a linear process, that somehow you go into treatment, and then if you're really lucky and you're really good and you really work hard, you won't relapse. When the epidemiology and the research on the neurobiology of the disorder says one of the characteristics of addiction is it's an insidious relapsing disorder. So this is something that researchers at the federal level and at NIDA especially have been trying to teach us, and SAMHSA, and CSAT, and HRSA, is that relapses are part of this course of life of the person struggling with addiction. And the opioid use disorder epidemic is we're dealing with one of the monsters around relapse. But it's paradigmatic of all of substance use disorder. So how do we get ourselves, how do we get students intrigued by the fact that I'm making a decision that I know is so destructive to go back to using after I worked so damn hard, maybe years, yet I'm going back to that drug or medication or alcohol or whatever it is if we look at addiction in a broader form. Neurobiology of reward is intriguing in terms of understanding that process. A few years ago, probably 15 or 20 years ago, I used to run a group in rural Kentucky for third offender DUI clients. So these were all clients, mostly men, from the rural Kentucky who had 3 or more DUI arrests and convictions. And my wife, who ran a practice where she did a lot of evaluation and assessment for the state, said, hey, we need somebody to do this group, and strangely enough, we can't find a lot of people who are signing up for it. So you have to do it. But it was an incredible learning experience. And these were men, primarily men, a few women, but mostly men, who had spent most of their lives. Many of them were we had some in their 20s and 30s, but a lot of them were in their late 30s and 40s, because it took a little time to get caught to get 3 DUIs. It took at least a decade or 15 years. We were using a treatment protocol that we were developing at the University of Kentucky Center on Drug and Alcohol Research that was really designed for working with rural populations. And the thing that the guys loved the most was the section on the neurobiology, the brain biology. And that was the one all of us intellectuals thought was going to be too hard for them to get their heads around. But when we used that module, many of them felt like, this is what it feels like. This is what it's like. And it got beyond a lot of the sterile. So the neurobiology piece is very important. I've already spoken briefly about the public health and frameworks. I think this curriculum It can be informed by that, will be informed by public health frameworks. Public health and social work are a natural interdisciplinary relationship. And Captain King's been kind enough to say that he's going to be looking at some drafts of our modules. So we're really excited about that. The other piece that's come up today that's really important is it helps our curriculum focus in social work on trauma and resilience science. So that we have to incorporate these emerging understanding of trauma and resilience in everything we're doing in our curriculum, and substance use is a really great place to do that in. I'd also would say that the ethics, morality, and spirituality of addiction, illness, treatment, recovery, the journey of particular lives, and the moral responsibility that we have as a society to join people who are in trouble all speak to an embrace of taking seriously the human condition, which is one of all of us share, of falling down and getting back up, of traumatic loss and resilience, of sinning and resurrecting, to use old moral terms, religious terms. We all share in that. And that is what sometimes attracts us to this work. It also is what's scary about this work, because we see ourselves so often in the life journey of our clients. And the mean mom's telling me I'm out of time. I'm just going to say a couple other things that I have to say, then I'll stop, because I'm a dean and I can't shut up. I think it's really, really important that we think about this, and Ellen and I had a conversation about this the other day. What is the outcome we're looking for? So at first, the outcome we thought was, can we get everybody in the room? Good outcome. And we did. And you're here in the room, and we're all in the room together. The second thing we began to think about, well, that's not good enough. We gotta complete the curriculum, and that's an important outcome. But then it's, let's not let this curriculum lie on the shelf. And I'll work hard with you all to work with, and we've got some directors in here, but to work with deans and directors throughout the state to adopt the curriculum, whether it be through an infusion approach, whether it be through standalone courses. But I hope we can get to a point as an outcome where this becomes, the material is delivered to every single social work student in the state of Florida, so that what you're doing will have an impact very soon. And that's exciting, especially in higher education, where progress is sometimes measured in like geological eras, right? I'd like to say by next year that we're going to be seeing this material in the classroom and students are going to be interacting with it. And finally, the super outcome, what I think is the superpower outcome, the best outcome of all, is that we'll be seeing our students in the field and our graduates effectively helping clients and families who are struggling with these disorders in a way where hope and healing, along with the best science, is operating. Thank you so much.